Good evening, everybody out in Facebook land. I am Paul Sterling. I'm the author of Argue Less, Love More. I am a relationship and intimacy coach. And tonight I am joined by three amazing women. And it's a conversation about the masculine and the feminine, the dark side, the divine side, the disconnected side. And your questions, comments are welcome in the comment sheet. And we wanted to really open up the dialogue, and I'm going to try to talk about my masculine side and my feminine side, and each of us are going to do that. So I'm going to bounce first. I think I'm going to bounce first to Holly, and Holly is a friend of mine. We're in masterminds together, and she is someone who is committed, and I'll let her say more about it, but committed to making a difference in the world of dating. So I thought she would be perfect for talking about masculine, feminine in the world of attraction and disconnection. So Holly, how did you go from doctor to being a dating coach?
Yeah, well, great question. I went straight through from kindergarten to doctorate. And when I started working with trauma clients, I got a bit burnout. And I went into executive search, which I had done as I worked my way through graduate school. I was pairing top talent with corporations and startups. And I got laid off. And it was a real blessing in disguise. I got to really figure out my calling in that time and did a bunch of soul searching. And so on the other side of that, it took me to Africa twice. And when I got back, I decided I really wanted to help people find love and to expedite their path to love. And so I started out as a dating coach. And then a couple years in, business advisors suggested I get into matchmaking. And I've been doing both ever since. And it's been almost 7 years. And I just love what I do.
Can you just, as we're about to bounce everybody up, but can you give us one idea of why you love what you do? Whoops, I didn't mean to bring that up yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, I just think, all the research has shown, and I think, it's having a really quality relationship is one of the biggest pieces of finding personal happiness. And I really first think that we need to find happiness within ourselves and really believe that we're worthy before we partner with someone else. But once that inner work is done, I mean, I think there are few things that bring us greater joy than being happily coupled.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to bounce to the other coast. Monica's a mom, a friend, someone who has an incredibly powerful feminine voice that when I listen to her talk about her journey, it touches my heart. And so I thought it would be great to hear from her. And how do you dance with that? And she's newly engaged and newly pregnant too. So it's like all of these worlds.
Were you just wanting me to introduce myself, Paul?
Yeah, sorry. Introduce yourself a little bit of how you got here and how you started on this journey of personal growth and.
Yeah. So a big shaping factor for my individual journey was just being such an outcast in my family and in my church and in like any school, most of the schools I attended, and not knowing really like where I fit in. And it
So
was
Monica, let me interrupt you for 2 seconds. What you're saying is awesome. What I want to do is I want to ask people, can they relate to it? So I'm going to interrupt all the speakers a little bit. But the only reason I'm doing is to emphasize what she just said, and among the speakers, how many can relate to feeling like an outcast? Like I totally felt like an outcast, didn't belong in my family. If that speaks to you, just put that in the comments and we'll be able to see some of the comments like I can relate or whatever. So continue. I probably will interrupt again, but
yeah. So trying to figure out like where I fit and trying to find, maybe other people that I could relate with. it was just such a big part of my journey and just traveling across the country and, just journeying and trying to meet people and trying to discover, what everything was all about and what I was supposed to be doing here. And then my journey led me into motherhood. And since becoming a mother, a lot of things have been made really clear for me. Yeah, just a lot just kind of naturally just kind of opened up for me since I became a mother and my intuition. Um, and and then recently I met my partner, as Paul mentioned. We got engaged during Christmas time. Um, so yeah, and it's just it's beautiful, it's challenging, it's every day is just a new adventure. Yeah.
And it's like what I'd like to do as we move into it later is to hear about that adventure. Is like what different roles and where is it that you're in your divine? Where is it your dark shows up? Where do you disconnected? We'll hear about all of that as we go forward. I'm going to bounce to Maggie, who's down in, I think, San Diego. And Maggie interviewed me on one of her shows, and she's a speaker, a leader, I believe a physical fitness coach who, is out there helping people kick ass and other things. So Maggie, why don't you tell us a little about your story as we dive in here?
Yeah, so I'm currently a podcaster and a fitness/life coach, and I focus on the 4 areas of fitness. So the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And how I got here was throughout my own personal development journey. It really started when I was 16. And that was when I lost my mom to breast cancer, and my dad had already been in jail for 2 years. So I had eating disorders, depression, anxiety, was dealing with grief, and that was the rock bottom moment in my life that kickstarted my personal development journey. And I found the 4 areas of fitness and how balancing those 4 areas will create this fulfilling life for us. So that's what I do now.
Wow, thank you so much. So one of our viewers right now, Alea Rose, I know Alea a little bit. She's in England, so she set her alarm to wake up in the middle of the night to listen to everybody. So we better say something important here. So I'm going to just draw a picture here, and then I'm going to ask each of you sort of your interpretation of it. Whoops, add to stream, and here we go. So it's come on, little computer, work for me. What I want to do is look at the divine, the dark, and the disconnected. And by the way, I if people like words to be spelled in the right way, I'm probably the wrong speller. So disco, yeah, and I'm working up a sweat just spelling in public. So what I'd like to do is hear, like, what is masculine, what is feminine in the energy, not just in the physical body, because that's changed a lot. So we're in a conversation tonight. I wanted to look not just at the physical body that is masculine, feminine, but what is the energy that you consider masculine, feminine, and what is divine, dark, and disconnected? So who'd like to start with diving into that deep topic here? Okay. So I'll okay.
Okay, well, like you said, the masculine and feminine energies don't have anything to do with gender. We both have, or we all have the masculine and the feminine energies within us. And how I like to think about it is the masculine energy is more of that structure. And I like to think about it as a container for love. And the feminine energy is the flow of love. And when you have those two coming into balance and harmony, even within ourselves, you create that structure and flow combined.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm going to say a tiny bit about my history just to give people an idea. Now, I grew up, my Irish alcoholic dad, who could be like, if he was on a good day, it felt like the world, I loved him. And on a bad day, it was hell. And one of the things he said is that the best defense is a strong offense. So I watched my mother in her feminine, and when my mother would get into her feelings, it would trigger my dad and he would get offensive. And growing up, I watched and I said, wow, if that's what masculinity looks like, I don't want anything to do with it. And I watched my mother, though, and my mother in her feminine would end up being collapsed and overpowered by my dad. And I say, I don't want anything to do with that either. So I was sort of disconnected. Masculine didn't look like something I wanted, and femininity didn't look safe. And so it took a while. I actually left home at 17 and went to Alaska and became a commercial fisherman. And it's like at that point, I started to find my masculine energy, but I found it in the dark way, sort of power over. Like, I was going to dominate in the relationship. I was going to make shit happen versus create a safe space and invite my partner into it. So that I learned some tough lessons around that. And I went through 1 divorce, 4 broken engagements, and decided that at some point, either I was going to become a relationship master or stay as a disaster. So that's sort of my dance with it. Holly, what did you want to say about this?
Well, I like what both of you have shared already. I think of it in terms of, I really think that the most evolved people are kind of in the middle of the continuum, between, having a highly developed masculine and feminine energy. And I know for a lot of my life, I was way too far on the feminine side. And in, I don't know, the last 10 years, I've kind of ramped up the more masculine piece. Yeah.
What does it mean to be way too far on the feminine side? I could make up a story, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I wasn't as self-actualized. I wasn't as productive and focused and kind of what I tend to think as some of that male energy. Yeah. I too grew up in a in a household that had toxic masculinity. And so, have kind of come full circle, so to speak, with a healthy balance of the two.
Yeah. And so when you say toxic masculinity, that's shorthand for something. And then we're going to bounce to Monica here. But just so that people get an idea, what does toxic masculinity mean to you?
Well, in my case, there was domestic violence, lots of rage, and there wasn't really space for anyone other than one of my parents, my father, in the home, emotionally or otherwise, really. And so, that had great effects on all of us.
So, yeah, because I can see, and I can even look in my past of when I used force over. I've never hit, a partner or anything like that, but still I'm 6'3". I don't have to hit somebody to be an oppressive feeling, like I just have to show up with a growl and it's like, oh shit, that's scary.
Yeah, definitely.
And so part of using the masculine to create a safe space is part of the divine side. So, Monica, what did you want to say about this kind of dance here?
So for me, it's really difficult to separate the physical aspects of being a woman from the feminine for me, because um, I was treated a certain way since the time I was a little girl because of my sex and because of being female. And I feel like that played a big role in um, how my feminine energy showed up. Um, I, I was one of those kids in class that I would get so excited about having like the answers, and I would want to raise my hand, and I really want to contribute, and I was so passionate, and um, that wasn't always welcome because I was in a female body, and a lot of people were threatened by my enthusiasm and my passion and my outspokenness, and um, they didn't understand that, and there wasn't space for that, and I didn't understand all of this obviously as I was growing up. I just knew that I was always in trouble, and I never understood why. And and then dating and seeing about how I didn't have any training when it came to sex or sexuality. That wasn't really spoken of except for wait till marriage. I mean, that was the only conversation in our household around sex and relating to men was just, save yourself for marriage, be a good girl, and then the guys will be interested in you, don't chase guys, things like that. So I wasn't taught about, female pleasure or how to go after what I wanted. It was always about making other people feel more comfortable and to like me. Um, and so when I went into the dating world, that's what I went in there with. And so um, I didn't know that sex was supposed to be something that I could enjoy, or I didn't know that I could just go into the world and create something whatever I wanted. I just tended to kind of react and respond, as opposed to being more dynamic, because I was afraid to. I was afraid of being rejected. I was afraid of getting in trouble. I was afraid of being wrong, because I felt like I was inherently wrong for being feminine or being a female. And so again, like with motherhood, it changed me so much because it kind of gave me this backbone that maybe I didn't have as much when I was younger, and like drawing boundaries. And so I feel like, I guess that for me was the first time of actualizing as a strong feminine presence, right? As rather than more of like the weak, disempowered feminine. Being a mother, there's like a lot of feminine strength in that. And because of that love and that passion that comes with giving birth and having the responsibility of a child. And so now, in my relationship, because of like I've all done all this work and all this journey and trying to understand and decode what pleasure means for me, what intimacy, like all of these things, and I'm still doing the work, but I have a much stronger voice now in my relationship than I've ever had before. And I'm with a much younger partner, and I wonder, how much of that is intentional, because I was kind of tired of being with older guys who just kind of felt like they could push me around or get me to, do what they wanted. And now I'm the, I'm the more seasoned person in the relationship, which Paul knows, and it's definitely a different dynamic. Yeah, but we're exploring.
And I think I heard something in there, and I just want to like ask you. It sounded like you said that the message you got was you were born the wrong gender, almost like if you had been born a guy, you could have been you would have been treated better.
Oh
Or
yeah,
something.
yeah. No, I think if I had been born as a male-bodied person, yeah, I don't think I would have had nearly as much I mean, obviously life is a struggle, but I don't think I
Right.
would have been treated the same way because I think there was an expectation on me that was unspoken, and I just kind of didn't get the memo um, of what my role was supposed to be. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's an expression that says we don't know who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't fish. Because when you're in it, you don't even know it. So part of this whole journey is to expose the water we're immersed in and then have a choice. So what does it mean to be feminine and masculine as now as a choice, not as a role, not as because of your gender, but because this is what feels good.
Well, and one of the things you said earlier in the conversation is how because of growing up and seeing how your father treated your mother, you didn't want to anything to do with masculinity because of that. And I feel like a lot of women go in the opposite too, that they see femininity as being disempowered or being a victim or having to succumb to men's sexual desires. And they kind of go in the other extreme of like wanting to be one of the guys and wanting to embody more masculinity. But I was never really able to embody like a lot of masculinity. Like I'm just naturally like a very feminine being. But I feel like femininity is also passionate, and it's also but it's just I think it looks different than masculine passion a little bit. There's like subtle differences, but
Mm-hmm.
I embrace my femininity, and I've gotten to a place where I don't see it as weakness. I see it as beauty. I see it as strength. I see it as Maggie was mentioning about how there's the structure and then there's the flow, and that is very much like I feel like I am that flow. And I love that. I love that dance, and I love feeling safe enough to fully explore that and embody that.
So part of what this call is about is attraction, alive, and passion. So attraction, I'm about to bounce to Holly. What is it that attracts us together? And then what is it that keeps love alive between the feminine and the masculine? And then what is it that creates passion? And part of what I like touch on here in a minute is the polarity between a strong masculine and a strong feminine, whether it's a strong man and woman, or I've got clients that are straight, I've got clients gay, lesbian, it doesn't matter. It's like what creates that polarity and passion. So let's start with bounce to Holly and like what creates attraction, because as a dating coach, and what is the opposite? Why don't we start with what creates disconnection? People come to you in pain because they're not getting a partner, and they're going like, what am I doing wrong? So what are some of the things people do wrong?
Oh gosh, how much time you got?
Just a few things here, not
Oh gosh, well, you know, there's so much I could cover here, but one of the things that really comes to mind is kind of the second subject that you were talking about, is where I'm feeling like I want to go, which is, in our culture, men tend to be more straightforward and direct, generalizing here, and women are trained to be pretty polite and to be pleasing, and not always that authentic. And I think that there is really a way to be authentic and kind. And so often I see this in dating and relationships where the men who really care about us, good men, really want to know how we're thinking and feeling and what we want. And right, as you always say, Paul, like you want to be our hero, right?
Yeah.
And we don't really think of it in those terms. So I always love when you remind me of that. But men want to be our hero. But what's difficult, and it doesn't have to be difficult, but it is because of the way that we're trained for women, is we're so trained to just please and to respond and react. And when we don't honor or think we're worthy of getting our needs met, we tend to not speak of them or even know of them so that we can speak of them. And so it creates this major disconnect between men really wanting to please us and us not thinking that we're necessarily worthy of our needs getting met. And so we're not even going to voice it. And so it creates this major disconnect of women trying to be polite and men really wanting to know what makes us happy. And, you know,
It's very confusing.
It's very confusing, but it doesn't have to be. And, it takes practice. It's a bit like a muscle, but it takes practice and also finding the right partner who actually does authentically care about you and wants to know what you want and need. And then you feeling worthy enough to really stand in your center and ask and require it at times.
Yeah, and we have a lot of I call it need shame. We have a culture of need shame, and we're embarrassed even to bring up what we want. And what happens a lot in long-term relationships, where I spend most of my time, it's like we believe that if you loved me, you would read my mind and meet my needs without me having to ask, because I'm embarrassed to ask. And if you don't do it, you don't love me.
Right. I feel vulnerable even acknowledging that I have needs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we normally don't even have a vocabulary of needs, a series of distinctions of what they are. And when I studied with Tony Robbins, he had his top 6 needs. And when I studied with Marshall Rosenberg, it was like 100 and some needs in nonviolent communication. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to bounce to Maggie and ask her for a vulnerable question here. And as somebody who's in the world of single and dating and stuff, what is it that's actually attractive to you in the masculine?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm currently looking, but I think what's attractive in the masculine is being able to hold that space for the feminine to feel safe. And the other thing is presence, because a lot of men and even women, when it comes to relationships or intimacy, we're not fully present in the moment. Like our minds are wandering somewhere else, thinking of the to-do list that we have to get done or what's happening at work.
Like this? Like, oh yeah, I'm listening. This is the anti-presence machine right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're not fully present with your partner or with someone, I think, especially for the feminine, that's a turnoff, or at least for me. When a masculine is not fully present and when his mind is wandering everywhere else but with me, that's a huge turnoff.
So give us guys some clear clues, because it's the women are all like nodding, going, yeah, I know what presence means. But sometimes guys don't know what you mean. Like, what does it take to be present with you? And what does it take for you to feel safe having your emotions? Because we're kind of taught, like, if you have a pain, we should fix it right away. And the longer that you're hurting, the worse a job we did. So, like, we get uncomfortable when you're in your emotions.
Yeah, I think a lot of men do get uncomfortable when women start showing their emotions and they start thinking that they need to do something to fix it and to control that. But there is nothing to fix. There's nothing to control when women are showing their emotions. And to be fully present just means that you are able to let go of the past and let go of the future. Because if you have any attachments to the past, it creates that state of thinking about the past and relaying that almost to the present moment. Like you're thinking about something that happened in the past, and maybe it's even comparison. You're comparing your present partner to a partner that you've maybe had in the past. And that's a sign that a man or a woman is still holding on to the past. And the attachment to the future is that constant anxiety. Like you're thinking about, what am I going to do next? And that's preventing you from being fully present. And I think being present for everybody, not just for the masculine, but just for everyone in general, is to surrender.
Surrender. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to give a quick way of thinking of the masculine and the feminine. I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm saying it's helpful. The masculine energy, when I'm in the masculine energy, is I did that. I made that happen. I created that. I got that. I did it. And by the way, we're trying to keep Monica awake here. I can tell she's on the East Coast. She's fading a little bit there. So it's late back there. And she's got, how many kids do you have? 3, 4?
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. And pregnant. Okay. So let's keep you here. So the thing is, it's like setting the masculine and the feminine up to win. So the masculine tends to be wanting to fix the problem, get something done, all the rest of it. So it's almost like, Maggie, if you came to me and said, I have a flat tire, and it's like, I go, well, let's go fix it. And you go, no, I want to talk about how I feel about my tire. And we're like, what is wrong with you? So like, I just want to say, these are like the differences between the masculine and the feminine energies, and that it's important to know, so you can set the masculine up to win by saying, honey, here's how you can win. Here's how you can get a result with me. You can sit there and listen and maybe even feedback what you hear me say. There's nothing to fix. You don't have to do anything. It's like they want to be your heroes. So it's like, how do you set them up? And then men, or masculine energy, how do you set the feminine up to win or to be their heroes? You also go, honey, whatever it is, I want to hear it. I want, like, tell me more. Something that the feminine rarely hears is tell me more. One last thing before we bounce to Monica is that let's just put it this way. The feminine can talk this much, and the masculine tends to be able to listen this much. And so it's really important when you're speaking, if you're speaking to a masculine energy, and I was working with a lesbian couple today, and one of them was definitely in their masculine, powerful energy. And it's like, she was like, boom, boom, what? And the other woman was like, and was going to tell the whole story from the beginning of time. And so it's important to know to set the guy up and go, I need 10 minutes. I need 15 minutes. They can go, okay, I could do that. That is like in dog years, that's like about 6 months for a guy of listening time. So, all right. Thank you, Maggie. We're going to bounce back to you here in a second. Monica, I want to hear from you again. What's coming up for you in listening to all this? And I want to hear your motherly wisdom. And one of the things, Monica, that I just want to say, part of that, what I love about you and your presence here, when you said you were a little girl and like you were exuberant, well, luckily that hasn't died. That has stayed alive. It shows up, and you show up that way, and you show up with such clarity and power. And to me, that's something that I love of the feminine, that vulnerability, that beauty, that energy, that being able to be touched by life.
Thank you, Paul. Like you have this really beautiful ability to make me feel really witnessed and like seen. Yeah, like seen means the same thing, but yeah, just and I really appreciate that so much. But yeah, and it's true that hasn't died. It never did. I think that's why I kept getting in trouble. I mean, to this day. Yeah, it's a curious thing. Yeah, I feel very blessed. I feel very blessed because I've been through a lot of things in my life, and yeah, there's just this. I think one of the things for me, that helps to like stay alive and connected to who I am is to be like as honest as possible with myself and those around me in each moment. I think honesty really helps us because I notice if I see myself, like, even for a moment, not being really like authentic, it feels really like it doesn't feel good. And I could feel that discomfort right away. And so that's one of the things that with like my partner that I have now, and even my last serious partner, I feel like the men that I tend to be with end up being really inspired by my honesty because, like you said, with the hero element, somebody who wants to, build something that I really want or to help me solve a problem, they need to know all of the components in order to do that. And for some reason, that programming that Dr. Holly was talking about the niceness, it just never stuck to me. Like I can't help but be really honest, and I know that sometimes it's very painful for my partner. Um, like I'm aware of that, but I don't feel like it's a bad thing. Um, and one of my excuses is like, well, my ego's been shattered so many times. I feel like a freaking mosaic. So, you can deal with a little bit of ego bruising while I'm letting you know what is completely real for me. Because how can I expect for my partner to help me build the life of my dreams, to build joy and everything we want to build together if I'm dishonest with myself or with him? So it hasn't always been easy. Like my last partner shot me, like with a gun, and he had never been arrested before in his life. I have brought out violence in men who have never been violent before, just because of how like radically honest and not back down I can be, and just be like, you will find honesty within your bones or we will just die trying. And that could be really intense. I'm sure that there's a lot of people who would
That could be really
deal with
intense.
that, but,
Wow.
that's what's real for me.
So everybody out there in Facebook land, take a breath. That was a super intense share. And before we bounce to Holly in a second, I just want to hear, Monica, what is it that for you find attractive in the masculine? What are the qualities that touch your heart when you're looking for somebody? And in your partner, in Eli, what is it you see that awakens you?
So the appreciation, like when I feel appreciated by the masculine, I really love that. When I feel like seen and appreciated, like they appreciate the contrast, they appreciate the opposite, so it's when that part is appreciated, that makes me feel very attracted, and because then more can like bubble up and flow, and then
Wait.
decisiveness is
Hold
very
on.
attractive.
Before you go past appreciation, what is it that lets you know you're being appreciated? I'm trying to set people up to win here. So what is it that's specific that could?
Well, like a really perfect example is like when, earlier you were referencing, my exuberance, and you were referencing what you like about me. Like when my partner does that, and he verbalizes to me in words that I can understand, what he loves about me, and he talks about those things, and he kind of sometimes like has a smile because I could tell he finds it endearing. That makes me feel really good and close to him, and I feel safe because of that. I feel safe because I know I'm appreciated. In that moment, he doesn't want to change me. I'm not bad or wrong, right? Because he's telling me the things he loves about me. He's telling me what he finds cute or charming about me, and I really love that a lot.
Cool.
Makes me feel really good.
Thank you, Monica. And we actually had somebody bounce in here, another good friend of mine, Rainbow Chen from Hawaii. So we've got from Vermont to Hawaii to San Diego to California. And Rainbow teaches people. She's was a Stanford alumni, and her thing is from the boardroom to the bedroom. She helps people have more of what they want. And I want to hear a little bit about, we've been talking about the dark to the divine to the disconnected, both masculine and feminine energies. And and I'm going to ask, well, I'm going to let you prepare that for a second. I'm going to ask Holly another question, then I'll come back to you, Rainbow, and hear from you. Holly, you, at one point we were talking about disconnected, and I think that you get to see people that are disconnected from either their masculine or feminine, and they're hoping, like I make up a story that if I fall in love, then I'll be connected. And I think you're like trying to get them to be connected and then they'll fall in love. So tell us a little about that.
Well, so often, there's kind of two camps. There's the people who know what they want, and then there's the people who don't really know what they want. But truly, most people don't really know what they need. We focus so much on what we want that we forget what we need. And if we're so focused on what we want, often the needs just go unmet. And so if we're, often wants are ego-based and needs are more soul-based. And so for a sustainable match, we actually need to focus on what we need as well as what we want, kind of an intersection of the two, of the ego and the soul, because we tend to be, at that intersection.
Can you give us an example? I make up a story of what that might look like, but what is a want? What is a need in your world?
Well, like for a lot of women say, I want a man, as a matchmaker, I want a man who's 6 feet tall or taller. But what a lot of people don't realize, yes, there aren't that many of you out there, Paul, who are
good to hear.
Feet, yes. And so what a lot of people don't know is that by having that one criteria, they are essentially eliminating 88% of the male domestic population. Just that one criteria alone. So, so that is a want, not necessarily a need. And so that's one example of how we narrow our options based on what we want, but not necessarily what we need. Now, having said that, my dad was really tall, and I think a lot of women kind of tend to, I think height and your dad's height, like, I don't know, has some foundational something or other there. I had a tall dad. I tended to like tall men too. But even lowering that criteria by an inch or two opens up so many more possibilities for women. And so that's a pragmatic piece, and also a want versus a need. Got
it. Thank you. We'll bounce back to you in a minute. And by the way, just so you know, if Holly is someone who works with people and has a course coming up and a challenge, so definitely I'll put her stuff up here in a minute. It's a long ass thing, but she can tell us how to get a hold of her. And and Maggie's, I'll definitely get a link for her podcasts, which are amazing and informative. So you'll want to hear her and Rainbow. And Monica said something about workshops. So we'll talk to you about that in a minute. But Rainbow, let's hear from you from the boardroom to the bedroom. That's an interesting thing. I think it's all about power. And
that is definitely one way to look at it. There are so many layers. I actually did a talk around how the boardroom and the bedroom do interplay with each other. How you show up in one can be how you show up in another. Or what are the things, if you're strong in one, what can you use that works in one, and help you in another area? And I know a lot of times people are like, how do they intersect? I'm like, oh, you'd be surprised. I'm like, even if you think about, like, I was just teaching my career jumpstart group program, and we were talking about the exploration phase, right? Of like, what's out there that could be a good match for the self-assessment, which is, the first aspect of kind of like what Dr. Holly or Dr. Battey. I'm from the South, so we go with like Miss Maggie or Dr. Holly. So it's around like your needs and your wants, right? So like really taking time to tune in and be like, what do I really need? What do I want? What feels safe? What has me feel appreciated? Like you're asking with Monica, like getting to like the nuances and the details, because every desire is unique to who we are and what our makeup or our background might be in our conditioning, right? And so we were just talking about like when you're going out and exploring things, it's kind of like the more clear you are about what you're looking for, whether it's in a job or in a mate, the more you can have your antenna up for what it is. And it's not just what our mind makes up. Like it looks good on paper, right? The job might look good on paper. The person might look good on paper. I have definitely been in that situation. But then you go and you feel it and you experience the group or the team or the person that you on a date with, and you're like, it doesn't feel safe, or I don't feel at home, or I feel like I have to be like extra hyped, to be in this person's field. And so there's so many layers, right? Of how they intersect with each other. Yeah, and the whole like masculine feminine piece, that this talk is more oriented around. Yeah, there's so much around that of like giving ourselves. We were just talking about parts work a bit, because I go pretty deep with my clients. So like, even though we might be talking about job stuff on this call, right? The class I just taught, which is why I was delayed getting in here. Thank you for letting me join in at this point. There's like all these like life principles underneath, right? Because everything is a spiritual journey. And so if you look at, the way that we make decisions, how do you balance all your different parts, right? So like, how do we integrate our masculine and feminine within us so that I know which part I'm calling on and I'm complete within myself? And then I can play more fully with someone else and be like, oh, today I feel like, you talk about power play. Today I feel like being the submissive, in the bedroom. Can you be the dominant? Or can we switch roles? Or can we play like we do in blues dancing, lead, follow, right? I teach blues dancing, and it's such a great metaphor for life. It's like, I'm going to lead and initiate, but I'd love for you to follow and answer, right? And then can we be clear that, this dance, I'll be the lead, you be the follow. But then maybe in the next dance, let's just switch back and forth and like really tune in that exquisite attention where you really, Paul, you have such a beautiful way, like Monica said, about being able to witness and have someone really feel seen, right? That's that exquisite attention. And can we like really play that so that maybe we don't have to name that we're switching. We can just be in that flow of, of leading and following. And sometimes you need to be really clear what that playground is and which role you're going to play too. So there's a lot.
Rainbow, there's a ton. I'm about to bounce to Maggie, so I wanted to be prepared. But I want to ask Rainbow, I've talked to you on other occasions. We've been on a mastermind together for a long time. And I want to just have you talk about you discovering your masculine and feminine side versus what you were expected from culture.
Ooh, that's an interesting, because, I grew up Taiwanese American, sort of technically immigrant because I was born in Taiwan, but I was raised in the US. And I think it's an interesting one because I do think culturally there's a way that the woman submits to the man, right? Like the Japanese culture used to be the 7 steps. You would walk 7 steps behind your husband. But the woman, part of the reason she walked behind the man so slowly is because she carried all the money, right? And so like, who's really got the power, right? And I do see that like there's a way that like, yes, like in Asia, there's a lot of 小太太, like little wives. There are people who like the men get to have mistresses, and the woman still is the matriarch of the family. right? So it's a weird, like on the top, it looks like the masculine leads, but underneath, I do think there's a way, if you think about from BDSM standpoint, the bottom can top. You know, you can top from the bottom. Like it might look this way, but really what's going on underneath. So I think I'm really good at topping from the bottom, right? And in some ways, I think it's a really special way to help the man win, right? Like I'm gonna set him up for success to say, these are all the kinds of restaurants that I like to go to, right? These are the kinds of cuisines I like. Here's some of my favorite restaurants. And I'm gonna let you lead because I do like a masculine man and I could just sit back into my feminine and receive, but I set him up to be a leader.
I want people to hear that. I've been saying it. We've got it from almost everybody today. It's like, how do you set both people, the masculine and the feminine, up to win with you?
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I like. And Holly's been talking about that a lot. And you know, Monica and Rainbow and Maggie. It's like, how do you set your partner up to win?
Mm-hmm.
So, Maggie, what do you want to add to this plethora of information here?
Yeah, I definitely resonated with a lot of stuff that Rainbow was talking about. And I think that with the masculine, a lot of the times, I mean, the old paradigm that I like to call it, the masculine is that control structure. And the old paradigm of the feminine is a lot of chaos. It's the unleashing your emotions without control. And the new paradigm that I like to call it, that hopefully we are all moving towards, is the masculine is more of just that direction instead of control. And he's the leader and he leads with integrity and love instead of control, which is fear-based. And the feminine, she is just flowing with love instead of being that chaotic emotional mess, which that's also fear-based. So I think the difference between all of this is just fear versus love. Are you acting out of fear or are you acting out of love? Because when you're acting out of love, that's how you create that dynamic.
Thank you, Maggie. And I just want to put this out there that I've been binge watching this. There's different things to binge watch. You know, you can go into Netflix and watch some crazy series and all that. I've been binge watching Brene Brown on vulnerability and courage. I've been binge watching Alison Armstrong on relationships, John Gray on the new stuff between masculine and feminine, Esther Perel, Dr. Sue Johnson, the Gottmans. These people, it's like, if you want a remarkable relationship, you need remarkable relationship skills. You're not born with them. There are skills that need to be developed. It's like, if you want to have a great dating experience, go and get yourself a dating coach. It's not something we normally do. I'm so lucky that these are learnable skills because I had relationship repellent when I was born. I was like, my brother was James Dean and I was the loser that was behind, you know, and it's like, I had so much learning to do, but luckily I found mentors. And that's why I have for people, I already said this, but my book, Argue Less, Love More, you can go to my website and I coach couples on how to do this, and find yourself a coach that don't necessarily, you know, there's this illusion, find a coach you're comfortable with. That is not my best advice. This is not about comfort. This is about growth. Find somebody that challenges you and calls you out and has you grow. You know, Rainbow's not huge, but she's got a huge stature. Like she can kick ass and get you, you know, to grow. And so pick somebody that challenges you and calls the best out in you. So we're going to go around and kind of close it up with the final thoughts and how people can get a hold of you. So Maggie, could you just tell us how they can get a hold of you? And I'll try to bring up, you gave me your thing. I think I can bring it up, but.
Yeah, so that is the link to my podcast. It's called Mind Muscle Enlightenment. That will take you to like the podcast page, but you can also find it on pretty much all platforms like Apple, Spotify, wherever you want to listen. And like I said, my podcast, we talk about the 4 areas of fitness: the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And Mind Muscle Enlightenment is the embodiment of mind, body, and soul.
Thank you. Now, this one is a short one, so this will be easy to do. And Holly, I'm sure there's also people can get a hold of you on Facebook right there with your name, because your name is very unique. So if you don't get this right here, what the link, send her a message, reach out to her, and set yourself up to win. So what are your closing thoughts on tonight, Holly?
Well, I'm grateful to be part of this tonight, and I think anything that causes us to grow and to have more awareness is definitely a good step in the right direction. I know there's a lot of lonely and isolated single men and women out there right now, and that's one of the reasons that I created my Finding Love During Lockdown Challenge, which starts on Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And the link that you can see there, that very long link, if you go there, you can sign up and RSVP for the 5-day challenge. The other way you can get a hold of me, I have a Facebook group called Conscious Singles, From Single to Soulmate, and you can join there. And also I have a website, findloveatlast.com. So I look forward to it. Yeah.
And if you can't find her in any other place, just get a hold of me. I'll get you the link, and let her know that you heard her on this call if you're new to her. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Rainbow, and then we'll Monica, we're going to end with you. This is Rainbow's link there. She's got a group. What do you want to say in closing, Rainbow?
Just, I'm so grateful to be here, because I think it's so critical for us to look at our different parts of ourselves and become friends with them and learn to be the leader, as I call it, the conductor of the symphony of your life, to really track like who's leading, what voices are here now, so that we can be aware of them, and learn to train them to help us instead of going unconsciously, running us ragged, and then creating havoc and a cacophony, in our life. And so I'm really grateful that you're bringing this to light. I'm so delighted to meet the other women here, because I'm like super jazzed and like turned on with this conversation. I'm like, wow, other amazing women who are doing good things in the world. So thank you, Paul, for bringing us together. And absolutely, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. That's a Facebook group. My website's under construction. So definitely like find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on that as well. So if you need anything, boardroom, bedroom, anywhere in between, I'm happy to be of service and chat more. Thank you.
And what I would love, thank you, Rainbow. What I'd love for people who are listening, and even if you're listening to the replay, one of the things that's consistent with all these people is they love to contribute. And so the way that we know that we've made a difference and contributed is the comments you leave. What was the aha? What did you get? What did you learn from one or all of our speakers? It's great for us to know that. And there's all sorts of things. Here's one from Judy that she says, "Oh my God, these women are going around carrying yardsticks looking for men." That was tied into what Holly was saying earlier. So,
yeah, actually, that's always how I end all my client calls and group calls is, what's the aha that you got? Because you go deep. And as a coach, what's your action item? Like, what is that thing you're going to do to integrate and move forward and actually that masculine side. I guess it's the feminine receiving the insight and the masculine moving forward and taking action on it. So thank you for naming that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And so Monica, you get to be the next to last. I'm going to say the last thing, but you get to, what is it you want to say in wrapping this up here?
Well, Paul, I'm really thankful you invited me. It's been such an honor to get to just be part of this conversation with these other incredible women. Yeah, I love that. That activates my feminine juiciness is having talks like this, and I could just stay up all night. Like if we were in like a legit slumber party, we would be up all night because I just more would just keep popping up for me. We wouldn't get any sleep. Um, yeah, and then in terms of what I wrote about Kali Singh's workshop, this summer, my partner and I were talking about having one person per month coming and doing an intensive workshop, and it's about finding your voice. 'Cause I've noticed that like people who spend like a lot of time with me start to be really vocal and like finding their voice. So I'm like, I should just integrate this into like an offering. And so that's what we're going to be gearing up for and like creating a space on the property to like be able to actually have someone come and join us in community and be able to really just tune in and find their voice and kind of like come out more of their shell into like more of a passionate, purpose driven life.
So is that a singing voice? Is it a speaking voice? Is it is that a metaphor? Is that the voice
It's all of
lessons
it.
too?
It's all of it.
Okay.
It's like more like just also like just finding like their truth and being able to express their truth. Because I've met a lot of people who really struggle with expressing their truth. And
Mm.
in our households, like we practice radical honesty. And so I feel like it's contagious, and I feel like it's something that if people were to spend time with us, that would be something that they get from being around us.
Mm. And here's another comment. Lovely wisdom, lovely about seeing more ways to harmonize the feminine and masculine. Thank you all for a lovely show. And thank you. So how do they get a hold of you, Monica?
Yeah,
They can
so
get a hold
they
of
can just
me or
yeah, they
if
can just reach out through Facebook. I haven't, like set up a website or anything yet. And I'm still just kind of like piecing it together because I have like so many ideas of how I'm going to show up, but sometimes it's hard for me to like streamline it and like get it, like all the details down. Like today, Eli and I were talking about the workshop, and he's like, "Well, where are they going to stay right now? Because it's winter." And I'm like, "So then we determined that we'd have to wait till the summer because it's freezing here in Vermont." And all the like spaces in our house are kind of designated right now for like different things, so we'd actually have to like build on a space, or so we're like trying to figure that all out. But if somebody wants to get a hold of me, they could just add me on Facebook.
got it. Well, thank you, all these amazing goddesses. If people are interested in my relationship coaching and what I do, if you just put a breakthrough in the comments or get a hold of me, I'll do a breakthrough session with you. And we spend about 45 minutes, up to 45 minutes to get clear where you are, where you want to go, and what's in the way, and create breakthroughs. And people tell me that, well, that they get more out of a breakthrough session than they do out of months of coaching. And Monica, do you want to say one thing about that? That's because you've been through one, and then we're going to close this.
Yeah, no, Eli and I, my partner and I, have had a breakthrough session with Paul, and Paul is just like we've discussed here. It's just like that incredible attention and presence, and really tuning in and listening, and through that listening and through that tuning in, he's able to like identify things and like or help us to identify things because he doesn't do the work for you, but he frames it in a way where like you're having all these aha moments throughout the session that are really fun and connective for you and your partner. And yeah, and it's a joy to work with Paul for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. That it's only sometimes a joy. Sometimes it's hard work. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Leave your comments if there's something that you think that a friend of yours could use. Share this link with them and let them know. And so, maybe everybody could unmute themselves and say goodbye all at once here.
Bye. Or aloha, as we say. Mahalo and aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah.
All right.